So.
Where's Kevin Canizaro now? Who ordered these plastic
Good evening,
chairs?
everyone. We are, welcome to the Audit and Finance Committee meeting tonight, Thursday, September 29th. We are only 4 minutes late, so I'll take that as a win. And with that, I'm your guest chair tonight, taking over for our chairwoman, Wanda Willingham. And with that, Majority Council, please read the roll.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Willingham is excused tonight. Mr. Peter?
Present.
Bergdorf?
Present.
Clay?
Present.
Grimm?
Present.
Ray Joyce?
Present.
Lakakis?
Yes,
Mayo?
Here.
And Brewski is excused tonight. You have 7 present.
Thank you, Majority Council. Our first order of business, as always, is to approve the previous meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion moved.
Motion. Second.
Motion from Mr. Joyce, second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Majority Council. Looking at local law number L for 2021, I believe is tabled at the request of the sponsor.
Yes, it is.
Been removed ever?
I cannot answer
Hasn't
that,
it
only
been
the
past a
sponsor
year
can.
now?
Ms.
Hasn't it been a
Lakakis.
whole 12 months? Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, didn't we pass something about how long you can hold
It
something?
can stay on until the end of the term, because it's a local law.
The 2 years?
The
The
four.
term is 4 years. because it's a
4-year
local law.
term.
Oh, my goodness.
Your term and my term seem to be one and the same, Charlie.
Okay. I thought it was 2
I
years.
thought so
On to
too.
current business, number 3, Majority Council.
Item 3 is authorizing an agreement with CNS Engineers, Inc. regarding space planning consulting services for various county offices and departments.
Welcome, Commissioner Latina. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Chair. An RFP was issued for a space planning consultant for the county office buildings. This is for the health complex, 60 South Pearl Street, 1 South State Street, 162 Washington Avenue, and the tower at the nursing home for the restacking of the county offices. They will do a comprehensive floor analysis and furniture and equipment analysis, what we have in the county, to make services better and maybe consolidate some services for the county for better cost savings.
Commissioner Latina, before I move it to questions from any of the members, could such stacking, if seen reasonable, result in us selling excess property and putting it back on the tax rolls?
Yes, yes, I think that's what the goal is here, to consolidate.
Good, that's very interesting. I'd be interested to see that. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. $417,000 to me is a heavy lift for consulting,
Yes.
for office space planning. Could you tell me a little bit more about office space planning and what exactly is that?
Yeah, well, the first phase is, I believe the first phase of it is 121,000. They come in and they come in and they go over each building, square footage wise, through our plans. They develop their own plans. They have to take an inventory of every piece of furniture in these places. Then they have to develop the plan, who would actually, after talking with different departments, how they work together, if they could consolidate their departments together. So it's a long process and an ongoing process. The extra money that's in there is if we decide to go ahead and do the development of this program, they come in and they package everything for you to make it a smooth move and to tell you how to do things. So it's a long process to do.
Isn't what the personnel department should be doing?
Well, I don't believe it's really the personnel department, and I think what it is really, it's buildings, how much square footage you have, how many people do you have, what divisions can work together. Can the health department be moved to, let's say, the tower, that we have 4 floors of the tower now that are empty, or 3 floors on the tower are empty? Can we take some of those services from DSS, health, mental health, move them up there where it would be more convenient for servicing the elderly or patients out there and they need? Same thing with aging. Aging is already out there. They've been moved from DSS. Veterans has been moved out there already at the tower, which frees up space at DSS. Can we move somebody from the health department over there? So it's the restacking, which is very time consuming.
Have you considered a more limited contract and then having the personnel department engage in this? 'Cause, by the way, we added several jobs to the personnel department last year in this year's budget. Have you considered maybe a much smaller contract as supervision that might work?
But like I said, I'm going back, it's really not personnel, it's knowing what you have. It's knowing the equipment you have, the furniture you have, the space you have, and trying to melt everything together into one pot.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Dave, I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand the two phases of this. But I actually read the entire proposal, and what I'm seeing here is this is intellectual work, okay? This has nothing to do, once there's a plan, and everybody buys into the plan, office relocation plan. First of all, is there a committee involved that's overseeing this effort?
Well, I don't know exactly, probably my office, the county exec's office, the different departments, the different commissioners will probably be getting together on figuring out the best way to do this.
So you haven't figured out a mechanism for oversight of this yet?
No, we have not.
Okay, because I think, did I read someplace you wanted to start by October 1?
That was before, you probably won't be starting this, with the delay that we had. This was actually passed through Public Works and got sent back to Audit and Finance. So by the time you get this, it probably won't be till January 1 that they really start going on this project. It probably,
Okay.
it's probably gonna be, they say 6 to 8 weeks. I believe it's gonna be longer, 6 to 8 weeks for the first phase.
Yeah. Yeah, they said 4 weeks, and then somewhere in the documentation, it said 6 to 8.
Yeah.
I worked for a public authority that did a lot of this. So, first phase is planning. I cannot stress to you more strongly that there has to be an oversight committee that has the ability to make decisions. Because once you make a preliminary decision on office relocation on the plan, you can't go back and change it because your whole house of cards crumbles. So you need to have a very, very high-powered oversight committee that's willing to make decisions. And to some extent, I think you ought to, while I realize this is a county executive function, I think probably, the legislature ought to have some kind of role, even if it's attending the meetings.
Yeah, but I don't believe like that would really be in the first phase. I believe that would be more second phase on the implementation of the plan. The first phase is really developing the plan.
If I may, Mr. Berger, Commissioner Latino, I do think that at a minimum, perhaps, and you can take this back, that whatever the results of this, I think Public Works and probably Finance should hear about the plan and the findings, since we will probably be asked to act on that if we go to the later plan. So
Right.
I think that would be helpful.
Well, we may be coming back for, we're going to try and lock into place the 295. So we'll probably have to come back and authorize the 295 through the legislation at that point. But we just wanted in the contract now to save that.
Well, I thought we were being asked to approve the entire 400,000 at this point.
You're asked to approve it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, we have the option not to do it. What it has to do is you have to really, we're trying to lock in that
But then it
place.
doesn't have to come back to the legislature.
Right, that's, I think that, I believe.
That's
Mr.
the
Berger
operative
is correct.
point.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
So what I would say, I'm sorry.
I'm going to agree with what I know I think you're going to say, is that maybe this ought to happen in a couple of parts.
Well, sorry.
The other point I wanted to make is under the deliverables in phase 2, it talks about, develop detailed plans, develop space plans, enhance space plans, develop location, develop inventory, develop technology relocation, develop drawings. None of this relates to the purchase of new workstations. There are costs that are going to follow in phase 3, which is the implementation. So that if we think we're gonna spend $400 and something thousand and we're gonna be able to restack Albany County, I don't think it's gonna happen. Do you have other monies built into the budget to
Well, we have
implement
office
them?
relocation bonds that we do have, that we can tap into when we decide to do this. I believe that we're probably at least a year and a half down the line before the implementation of this, if it's decided to do it. and how you wanna do
Is
it.
there money in the capital plan for a phase 3?
Yes, it would be in relocation, it's not necessarily a separate a separate plan bond for this. It would be a bond that's for office relocation, that we would be pulling the money out of.
Is there a figure you're floating around, or?
Not at
Say
this, not at
bond?
this time, because the first phase is really a feasibility phase, really to see how much, I mean, if they're gonna come back in the feasibility phase and say, you know what, you're stacked as good as you're gonna get, then you wouldn't really wanna go with phase 2. You wouldn't really go with anything. If they say, well, it's gonna be minimum, well, yes, you can take a few people from the health department, you can take a few people from DSS and put them up to the tower, your costs are very minimal. Now, if you wanna get rid of a building, that, I think that's what the plan is, it's a little more detailed than that.
Well, may I?
Of course, Mr. McCarthy.
I don't understand, like, when you say getting rid of a building is in the plan, and we're gonna study this to figure out what's the best thing to do, how those two things can be, mutually exclusive. Like, it sounds like you think you're gonna be getting rid of a building, and you sounds like you're gonna be allocating to putting property out to resell and put it back on the tax roll. So that's like a foregone conclusion that you're starting with. So is that the directive that you're giving to these designers, who I support fully, that designers should be looking at the way that our business is laid out? I support fully the idea of looking at all of our buildings and bringing them up to some kind of a level of comfort, access, 1975, design phasing, phased out. I'm all for all of that. The question to me is like, it seems to me like you're going in with an idea. Are you going in with an idea, or are you just gonna let them do their thing?
No, we're going in with an idea, and that's why it's really, the first phases is really the feasibility part of it. We have to get all the commissioners' opinions, they're gonna go, they're gonna talk to all the commissioners, they're gonna go into the buildings, they're gonna see what's there, they're gonna see the furniture that we have. They're gonna have everything listed, it's gonna be a comprehensive plan of everything that we have and everybody's wants and wishes. If we choose to sell a building, they will have to come up with a plan, where are we going to put these people? Where is it, how do we integrate them into the other buildings without purchasing another building? So that's gonna have to be in their plan, in the restacking portion of this.
Are you at liberty to say what you're thinking of selling, or what you're
That's
not
not-
having in your mind clearly?
That's not for me to say.
But it's technically any of the buildings that were listed
Correct,
as part of the scope of the study, is that
Correct.
accurate to say?
yes.
After the first phase of this, do they come back and say, we plan on saving this much money?
It may be a portion of it, I don't believe that's part of their scope of work. It would be something along the lines, well, if you're gonna sell a building, we would probably know how much we would save as far as what we would spend in heating costs, cooling costs, what would you be getting back into into the coffers that when you sell the building, back into the county, and your long-term maintenance portion of it. We would know that, what it's costing us.
And just for anybody, I guess in terms, if it doesn't come back to the legislature, where does it go? I mean, if we have the 417,000.
Well, it's pre-approved, so it wouldn't need to come back. However, if there's a request to the executive's office, we could certainly relay that to them, that the legislature is looking for a response prior to moving on to phase 2.
Okay.
Which
I believe.
I would.
which is something that I would
Can't we,
like to
yeah,
include
can't we
back.
split them?
Well, and the thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, majority council, is that this is a locked-in bid, so we don't, the county does not have to choose to do phase 2. However, if we pre-approve it, the executive would have the right to continue with phase 2 and wouldn't need another vote from us. However, I do believe that us requiring and requesting it, if we do approve this and move it forward, that the executive's office comes back with the results of phase 1 and explains if they want to go to phase 2 or not, to potentially the entire legislature, or at least a joint meeting of Public Works and Audit and Finance, I think that's fairly reasonable. And would that be something, I'm looking at you, Mr. Riley, and Commissioner Latina, that you would be comfortable doing and committing to?
Yes, of course, yes.
Mr. Rudolph?
That sounds like a wonderful plan if you could somehow work that into the resolution.
Yeah, well, that's what we were just
Okay.
saying. We can add it to the resolution itself, and Mr. Peter is correct.
And I believe there's nobody better suited than the county executive's office to make these decisions. But once again, I cannot emphasize enough, decisions have to be bought into at the end of phase one, before you move to phase two.
Yep.
Because you cannot have somebody changing the program, if you will, the overall design program of the restacking after you have done phase two, which is the planning for how to do it. Somebody says, no, I need another conference room over here, and I need bathrooms here and here, and it just doesn't work. And it adds dramatically to change orders.
Yes.
And that's not a position we want to find ourselves in, especially if there isn't at the end of phase one, hopefully you can also get some sort of estimate as to how many square feet you have, how many square feet you actually need. If there is a decision-making body that is sitting on top of this that is to finalize those sorts of decisions. And then if you've got to add 50,000 foot of new cubicle space, there's a way to do an estimate for that in the planning process as they draw it out, and they can value engineer it and keep it within your budget parameters. But my 2 cents or so.
So that, if there's anyone who'd like to make a motion, I would also say that that motion would be with the intent spelled out that after phase one, we would get a report back to a joint committee of Public Works and Audit and Finance, or at least a presentation.
So moved.
Can I, yep.
Second from Mr. Mayo.
Can I just, a final word, Mr. Chairman? I would just ask the members to consider $417,000 for a consultant for office planning. And think of the alternative uses for that money that could be possible, given the needs of the 315,000 people in this county. Accordingly, I'm voting no, I can't support it. Thank you.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
I mean, I support your idea to,
No, understood.
yeah, okay.
We got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you very much.
All right, item 4 is authorizing agreement with Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood LLC regarding arbitrage compliance services.
Comptroller Rizzo, welcome, and thank you for coming to the meeting.
Arbitrage. I learned about that word in the movie Family Man, arbitrage. It's not very clinical.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Audit and Finance Committee, the Department of Audit and Control is requesting the approval of a professional service contract with Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood for arbitrage compliance consultant. To recap, the RFP submitted receives 3 bidders. Hawkins was the lowest bidder. Included in the RLA is the RFP, the Hawkins proposal, the proposal scorecards, and the Purchasing Department letter of approval. The Comptroller's Office, working directly with management and budget, has done an exceptional job monitoring cash flow and investment funds to increase the county return on investments. The purpose of bringing on an arbitrage consultant is to ensure and to confirm compliance with all federal and state regulations, and also to optimize and maximize the potential future yields that Albany County can realize on invested funds. In addition to having a straightforward and competitive cost proposal, Hawkins has extensive arbitrage experience, demonstrated expert-level analysis, wide network of clients and references, which include other large counties in New York State. I'm recommending Hawkins as the arbitrage compliance consultant for a 3-year contract with 2 optional 1-year extensions. If committee members have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. If there are any questions from members of the committee? Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Arbitrage compliance, you're going to have to explain that one to us. Okay, that means what?
Okay, just to simplify it and just a few words. Arbitrage means tax exempt bond proceeds are invested in higher yielding taxable securities, resulting in a profit. So the concern is you can't borrow money and make more money on your interest rate. And there's rules about when and when you can't. But it's for the entire period of the bond. So Albany County has not maximized on their investments in getting a return as much as I think that we have working with management budget. Management budget is the chief investment officer. So we're increasing our interest income. But because we're using some bonded funds to increase that interest income, you can't incur arbitrage, making more money on the interest rate than what you borrowed.
So the consultant just confirms that you're doing it the right way?
Right, but, well, the right way, what it is, and my understanding is Albany County has not had an arbitrage consultant, but now that interest rates are going up, the need is more apparent. But we have 11 bonds right now, so they have to go back and look at all of the 11 bonds, and they have to take the time frame of when it started and what the interest rates are for the bonds, but we've invested more, our interest rates are gonna be much higher now than the bond rate, but that's okay, because we really didn't maximize on it in the beginning years. So we can make higher percentages right now, but we need it's really like belts and suspenders to have this consultant to make sure that we don't incur arbitrage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There are very serious penalties with the IRS if you get into an adverse arbitrage situation.
Rebating the interest income that you.
You can lose the tax exempt status of your bonds. And this is, it's like you borrowed money at 2% and now you can get 3.5% interest. Then that's an example
But you might be
of
able to,
arbitrage.
but you might be able to, looking at the whole term of the bond. That's why it's so important to start from the beginning of the bond and calculate.
I called the controller today because I looked through the documents and I was a little hazy on what the potential cost of this might be. Would you
Right,
like to
so,
elaborate on that?
sure, in Hawkins' proposal, as well as the others, what they do is they charge per bond, and they'll do a 5-year, some of the bonds are quite old, so a 5-year look back costs more than, say, a 1 or 2 year look back. So the total cost with all our bonds for Hawkins was about $25,000. BLX was $30,000, and Causey was $50,000. It is very complex as far as them looking at these bonds. We're going to actually give them more data, so hopefully to reduce that. But if there are hourly fees, it may actually go over that $25,000, depending, because we have refundings. We're very complicated, and there's 11 of them, and this hasn't been done yet. But the proposal based on the 5-year look back and the 1 year is about $24,191. But we're asking that the actual, because I don't know if the resolution actually indicates a dollar amount, so we said that we should probably have, say $40,000 to be approved, realizing the contract without the hourly rate is $24,191. But if there are triggers, there might be an hourly rate incurred.
Any more questions from members of the committee? That I would accept the motion.
Motion move.
From Mr. Joyce, and seconded by Mr. Grimm. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Madam Comptroller.
Thank you very much.
Item 5 is amending the 2022 Department of Residential Healthcare Facilities budget for overtime.
We're joined by Mr. Camiso. Welcome, Mr. Camiso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a budget amendment before this committee that we are requesting approval of. That budget amendment is a response really to the federal and state government's regulatory environment that's on nursing homes right now. That being that at the state level, we're required to have 3.5 hours of nursing care per resident day for every day of operation at the nursing home. And at the federal level, the way that the quantity of the care we provide has also been changed as well by CMS. And to be clear, we are a 5-star quality facility and we continue to have that designation. However, on the quantity front, We have changed metrics regarding weekend staffing, night staffing that the federal government is now recording. What this amendment does is takes the vacancies that we have remaining in the 2022 operating budget and converts those vacancies, as you will see in the detail, to 3 categories of additional hours of labor that we can then achieve to satisfy that regulatory environment. Those being overtime, the second being per diem labor, and of course then agencies as well. We are using those on a temporary basis. To be clear, our continued commitment is to filling our full-time positions with Albany County employees. Our philosophy is that that is a better interim and long-term solution to have that type of continuity amongst your staff. But in the interim, to comply with this these law at the state level and the CMS reporting at the federal level, we are requesting approval of these changes so that we can fund those 3 categories with vacant positions that are existing in the 2022 budget.
And before I take questions from the other members, just to confirm, Mr. Commisso, the overtime is completely covered by the vacant positions, so it's basically a wash?
Yes, this is budget neutral. The expenses that have been reduced here equal out to the expenses that we're adding. And yes, this is a budget neutral resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Commisso. I will take any questions from the members.
Yes,
Mr. Grimm?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, 3.5 hours of nursing care per resident per day. Can you explain that to me? Because assistant, she has several patients at once. So what exactly does that mean, 3.5 hours per day?
So effectively today at the nursing home, there was 240 residents, right? So by the math today, we would have to have 840 hours of nursing care in place to comply with the state law that has been in effect since April 1. So again, the industry at large is short of that requirement. To the industry and to some other folks, it's been a bit of a head scratcher that this was put into place at this time, because just as well as I'm sure you're aware, the governor just issued a state of emergency as it relates to healthcare staffing in New York State. So you have that going on simultaneously to this requirement that we have 3.5 hours of nursing care. But nonetheless, we do have to comply with that law as is, and that law states that for a day like today, we would have to have approximately 840 hours of nursing care.
But you don't have the nurses and the CNAs available. How do you do it?
No doubt about it. And our leading age is one of our associations, NISHFA as well. They have sued the state over this mandate, and they're bringing it to the attention of the Assembly, the Senate, and we don't know that this necessarily makes much sense. Again, given also too, many facilities, but certainly our own, I can speak for, we're 5-star on quality metrics, and we have this diminished staffing metric in place. So, you know, are we achieving what we need to achieve when it comes to quality metrics? Yes, but we are not meeting that requirement as currently is the law in New York State.
I don't think any nursing home is, I'd imagine. How do you manage not meeting the mandate if you don't have, they passed this mandate without knowing that people don't have enough staff?
To some degree, it is given tremendous power to agencies, unfortunately, right? And they have had higher rates in place because they responded to this regulatory environment. And they know now that there's 600 nursing homes across New York State that need agency staff. Again, this is a short-term solution that we put in place here for, with your approval, we're putting into place for the remaining 3 months of the year. But our commitment is continued to have Albany County employees be our long-term staff. We have a better compensation package. We have a beautiful facility, thanks to the county executive and this legislative body, and that we can attract people with that package that we have in place.
Larry's a wizard at getting Medicaid funding and state funding. Is there any possibility of getting state funding to cover this enhanced cost? Which, by the way, what is the enhanced cost? What does the mandate cost?
The mandate right now, based on agency rates, using 3.5 hours of care per resident day, could cost approximately $40, 3.5 times, it could be $140, $150 per resident day. So it is costly, certainly very costly. We include this information on our Medicaid cost report. So that's submitted to the state every year, and I'm sure this is something that, again, we're hopeful that the Assembly and Senate will look further at in the near future for the entire industry.
At least finance it, even though you don't have the people anyway. It's a nutty situation, but I appreciate what you guys are doing to pull it together.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Berger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Dave. Will these numbers in this overtime give you the dollars necessary to achieve 3.5, assuming that you can find agencies and overtime? And, I've seen your supervisors sit there and call through the entire staff, trying to get people to come in, do half a shift, an extra shift, a double, whatever. So I've seen that, and I know what an arduous task it is. But will these resources help you achieve 3.5?
Yes, it brings us much closer to that 3.5, and we're hopeful to achieve the 3.5. Again, we've been fortunate over the past 2 years to have a very committed core staff that has been with us throughout the whole period of the pandemic. They made some great sacrifice in that regard, but we do need some additional staff, and this is, again, a solution that gets us through the end of December and the 2022 budget year.
So this is just for 3 months?
This is an amendment to the 2022 budget.
Okay, but how much of it's $3 million for
Sure.
October, November, December?
Yeah, and to be clear, we have vacancies in our budget.
Yeah.
Positions that have been vacant, we have liquidated those vacancies to fund these categories where we need to have additional dollars.
So do those positions go away in the next budget that you present, or how does that work?
Well, as Mr. Commisso said, the anticipation here is to return to a traditional staffing model at some
Yeah.
point. So while we're working, we just had a meeting today with Mr. Slacky here in this building. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to formulate 2023. The industry's upside down right now.
Right.
I was on a call with one of the senior leaders at Albany Med maybe a week and a half ago. The numbers that they're running, they're short 600 RNs at this point. They're
Yeah.
paying travel nurses numbers that weren't even feasible a couple years ago. It's I don't want to get into their finances too deep, but this is every healthcare facility in the state.
Yeah,
has.
my
There's
understanding-
not supply, so it's now a buyer's market or a seller's market.
My understanding, there's no nursing home in the state that's in compliance.
Probably not.
So just to everyone, if there are not many more questions, we have approached our 30-minute mark, we still have some to go. I'm happy to take if there's additional questions, but we can also talk conversation offline. Any other questions from member? Mr. Berger?
I was gonna say, if there were no questions, I would move it.
I'll second.
Motion from Mr. Berger, second by Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Riley. Thank you, Mr. Commisso.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Item 6 is authorizing a payment in lieu of taxes
Amending,
agreement with Route 9W Solar One LLC regarding real property located at 690 Route 9W in the town of Bethlehem.
Welcome, Mr. McGuire, and Mr. Riley, I'm sorry I said thank you earlier, since you'll be with us a little longer.
I think I finish up the agenda once Mike's done.
Good evening, members of the Audit Finance Committee. How you all doing this evening? Nice to see you in person. This is
Yep.
only my third in-person meeting, so this is exciting stuff.
Let's go.
I'm here tonight with a request for an authorization of a pilot agreement. It's actually revenue generating, so that's a good thing. This is a proposed pilot agreement with Route 9W Solar One LLC within the town of Bethlehem. They're looking to construct a 5-megawatt solar array at 690 Route 9W. It's in Bethlehem. I can show you where it is on the map if you have any questions about that. But anyway, so under real property tax law, section 487, the value of solar arrays is exempt from local property taxes. Section 487 does allow for taxing jurisdictions, in this case the county of Albany, to enter into a pilot agreement. That way we would actually be able to generate some revenue from this solar array. The proposed pilot agreement has a payment amount of $750 per megawatt AC. So the first year payment would be $3,750. It has a 2% annual escalation and a 15-year term that would begin on January 1st of the year immediately following the completion of construction of the array. So at this point, they're going through permits within the town of Bethlehem. This would probably maybe be constructed in '23, maybe into '24. So If anybody has any-
Before I go to you, Mr. Bergdorf, just quickly, so just to clarify, so the property taxes for the existing structure of how the property is stays the same?
Correct.
And then and the pilot is just for the improvements that are from that, so it's pretty much, it's a plus plus.
Correct. So the base tax on the land parcel, and what they are, the existing improvements would remain the same. That assessment doesn't change, the taxes would remain the same. The section 487 exempts the increase that's attributed to the construction of the solar array. So if, whatever, let's say it's $1 million that it's assessed, that would be exempt from county, town, and school taxes under section 487.
Got it, Mr. Bergdorf, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up with what Mike just said. So the county pilot is for 37.
Yes, sir.
Starting there. Is the school and the town also gonna
Yes.
enter into pilots with
The
this
Bethlehem
organization?
School District has been negotiating pilots, and they will be for this one. The town of Bethlehem has not been, up to this point in time, negotiating pilots with solar developers. Instead, they're choosing to exempt the value for tax purposes within the town. So that would be the town tax and also the general highway tax. Special district taxes are not exempt under 487, so that'd be light districts, fire, whatever the case may be for that property.
So in Bethlehem, the town is not only not getting a pilot, but they're giving,
They're exempting the
Exemptions?
value exempting the value of the solar array, yes.
As an improvement.
And that's their choice.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
policy decision.
Yeah.
okay. And this is, this $250 a megawatt hour, that was something that was the NYSERDA recommendation. That isn't, this isn't the first time we've done that.
No, it's generally been around that amount, so
Yeah.
typically what the developers will say, I'll pay X number of dollars per megawatt. And then the taxing jurisdictions, what we do is we look at what our typical percent of the tax burden is for that property, and then the payment amount usually falls within that percentage. So for example, this property, our burden is 12.8% of every dollar spent on taxes for this property, 12.8 cents goes to the county, right? So then what we're looking at is a pilot payment of, well, it would actually be, we're getting a little bit more than that 12.8%
Okay.
for what that burden would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Any other questions? We have a motion to move by Mr.
Second.
Clay, second by Ms. Lakakis, and I believe we have an abstention.
Yes,
from
thank you.
Mr. Joyce. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? With Mr. Joyce's abstention noted. Thank you very much, Mr. Clay. Mr. Riley, thank you for sticking with us.
Of course, thank you, Mr.
We
Chairman.
missed your company.
Item 7 is authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 32 Mcallen Avenue in the city of Kahoot.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is, this falls under the portion of the property disposition plan. This is the immediate, abutting owner, right next door. They had reached out to us to acquire the property.
Motion move.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Joyce, second from Ms. Lakakis.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 8 is authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 397 First Street in the city of Albany.
Mr. Riley?
Mr. Chairman, this is a slightly different situation. I was actually just talking to Mr. Simpson because I believe it's in his district. This was it was a rental property. The landlord was foreclosed upon. The tenants are still in the building. So they have offered to buy it from us for $25,000. That is in the disposition plan as well.
I mean, I don't want to speak for another member, but that sounds like a pretty good solution.
I think for the tenant, it's probably the best solution.
That's great.
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Clay.
Second.
Second from Mr. Grimm, I'm sorry, Mr. Lakakis.
Whatever.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Second.
Item 9 is amending the 2022 Albany County budget for healthcare and mental hygiene worker bonus program.
Mr. Riley.
So this was a program put out by New York State. There was a lot of confusion on this when it first came out. In the beginning, every healthcare worker in the state thought that they were eligible for it. There was a lot of guidance given out. As that was distilled down, we came up upon the first application period. We put out guidance to our department heads, said, you know your employees best. If any of your employees think that they're eligible, or if you think they're eligible, work with them to get them to file with the state, knowing that the state may deny some of those. They have final say in it. So what this is we kind of fast-tracked it, because once we get the money, we only have 30 days under this law to distribute the money to the workers directly. This is a do not exceed amount. This was every person that was filed in the first filing period. This is for $1,500 per employee for that period. Each employee is eligible to vest in up to 2 periods for a total of $3,000.
And to clarify, this is state money, they set the criteria,
Yep.
there's no cost to us.
Correct. Even the payroll taxes are reimbursed.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Riley from members? Mr.
Just a
Woodruff?
quick question, are these predominantly collective bargained employees?
Yes.
Or
Yeah, the vast
exempt
majority are direct care at our nursing home and our health department,
Yeah,
Okay.
patient
and
facing.
mental health department.
Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, thanks. There's like 246 employees, I think.
I don't know that.
Something
If
like
that's
that.
what's on there, I'd take your word for
Yeah,
it,
and that, my concern was, I voiced this at the committee meeting, that means 2,200 employees aren't so happy.
Yeah.
They're not getting the money, but you really don't have the discretion.
We have zero
You're
discretion.
giving the state guidelines and saying, here's what meets the state guidelines.
Correct.
Now, on the flip side of this is, the county is losing control on how it rewards its employees on a merit basis, because the state is so restrictive, it's basically the case. So I have an issue with it, but I'm certainly not gonna turn down the money from the state. But it is,
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
It's not equitable, but I'm also gonna advocate for every county employee who is eligible to get that money.
yeah, I think that's the only position you can take. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other questions for Mr. Riley?
I'll make a motion if not.
Motion by Ms. Lakakis, second by Mr. Clay. Sorry, Mr. Clay beat you by just Mr. Graham. All
Split
those in
second.
favor?
Favor.
Any objections? Unanimous.
Item 10 is amending the Division of Information Services 2022 budget for a Chief Information Officer.
Mr. Riley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So I'm sure that many of you are well aware, earlier this year, our Chief Information Officer, Perry Blanchard, retired, left county service. That triggered a very large recruitment effort. We posted it in multiple places. We received, I believe it was 72 applicants from multiple states. The vast majority of those were from the Capital District. We formed a search committee that was myself, my deputy, a woman from SUNY Rockefeller's Center for Technology and Government, as well as the current Chief Information Officer for Onondaga County to kind of get some more technical experience in there that Patrick and I could not really provide. At the end of multiple rounds of interviews, the committee came universally to one candidate. To the point, everyone said, if you can get him to work here, you're lucky to get him to work here. The problem is Perry's salary for, it was what it was $130,000. That's not enough to recruit an IT professional in this market. The City of Albany recently did a study. Their range, I believe, was somewhere in the 140 to 165 range for someone in that role for the size of the City of Albany. We all know the sensitivities regarding IT and IT security at this point. I think we got a great candidate, but it requires a bump to the base to 140,000 to meet the number that he negotiated to.
Should have pulled us to range.
Any questions for Mr. Riley? Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, 140,000 starting salary is pretty eye-popping. I understand the market circumstance, but are you saying you already have someone in mind who wouldn't take the job at 130, but will take it at 140? So that's their, you can't wiggle them down at all?
I did a lot of negotiating with him, Mr.
Okay, so it's either 140 or you
He's
can't
still
get
taking a pay cut, and it's a situation of circumstances.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Mr. Bergdorf.
Just a quick question. Who's running the department now?
Dave Birkin has been our acting CIO in the interim.
Okay. And was he considered as part of?
He was one of the finalists.
Okay. And it is not,
He's not going to.
he's not gonna do it?
Correct.
Okay. So it's going to an external candidate?
Yes.
Okay. Does that person have to relocate?
No.
Okay.
And I can get into more detail if any of the members want. I don't want to go too deep
Yeah,
into
yeah, it's just
personnel.
personnel, yeah,
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if anybody wants direct questions after the meeting, I completely
Yeah,
have it on.
yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Riley. Are there any other questions from members? That I entertain a motion? Mr.
Mr. Grimm got first, Mr. Clay got second.
Oh, boy.
All those in favor?
Sorry, Lynn.
It's quite all right.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Riley, and I believe that's it for our agenda, so I will take
Motion.
one last motion from Mr. Grimm, followed by Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to staying later? Great. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Matt.
Nice.